Hey everybody, this is DM Gary. No, it's not that one. And what we're going to be talking about today is going to be something that I really get excited about. We are going to be talking about presence. That is the ability to take an NPC, a non-playable character, and make it come alive at the table. Make it something unique and interesting. Something that the players will not only remember, but they might enjoy being able to interact with. Now, NPCs in general are broken into two categories. You have their presence, what they kind of look like at the table, and what a lot of people kind of consider to be the role play element of playing at the table. Then you have their role, what function they are going to have in the game, what they're actually going to do to drive the plot forward, what sort of elements that they are going to be focusing on. That's going to be the game element of the NPC. Today, we're going to be focusing on that first part, the presence. This is going to be the part that is best shown at the table. This is going to be what it looks like to be this NPC, what it sounds like, what it feels like, how you're showing your players that you're going to be a specific character. Now, a good NPC presence is something that your characters will not need to ask, oh, who is it again who's talking? Oh, I remember. It's that guy that did the thing with the name. A lot of players are going to be bad at remembering names. I'm terrible at remembering names. I don't remember the names for some of my NPCs, but one thing that people can remember a little bit easier is what's called a tag. Now, a tag is a brief description that is used in whole or in part whenever you introduce or you first see a particular character in a scene. It can even be an entire character's persona or name, something like from the X-Files, the mysterious man with a cigarette. If you say that, if you're a fan of the X-Files or if you've experienced that series at all, it immediately snaps. You know who you're talking about. Even should that person have a name, saying who that is gets you a really clear understanding of exactly who it is that we're going to be talking about and exactly what their perspective on the current situation is going to be. Now, these sorts of tags can be all sorts of different things, and today, as we sort of break down these things, I am going to be explaining through a couple of examples. His skin looks like taut leather made from old oranges and pulled over a bony frame that towers over you. He stands rigid with fingers steepled, his palms pressed to his stomach, in a close-cut suit that looks clearly custom-made with a single pocket buttoned carefully, which contains a single large book. Now, when you have that character, that is my character, the librarian, in some of my games, that's going to be clear who that is. If you use that description in whole or in part, every time you see them, it's going to stick out. And you can see what part of the tag, what part of the character that the players best remember, what piece of that they use to describe that person. If they're always talking about the guy with the orange skin, then you can really repeat that particular spot whenever that character is seen in a scene. If they talk about noticing that the person has a book in their pocket all the time, and that book becomes an important part for the story, you might refer to them as the guy with the book, or the players might refer to them as, oh, the librarian, he has that journal, or whatever it is that's in his pocket. That is going to be as useful and as helpful of a tag for making it clear who you're talking about as the way that you stand, the presence that you use, the voice or the type of speech that you use when going in that character. For me, the whole goal of this is that any one of these elements, if done well, will allow you to quickly and easily show to your players what character you're speaking as in that particular scene, especially when you have multiple NPCs that are interacting with one another or interacting with the player characters, the PCs. It is very useful to have quick and easy ways to discern one NPC from the next. The tag is going to be your start point, your introduction, so make sure you draw attention of the players towards what sets that character apart. We've already discussed the librarian, but now let's consider another character, Gelded Blackheart. The old hobgoblin moves with a shuffling gait. His body is crooked as his smile. He carries with him the scent of grave dirt and lavender, like a funeral parlor who thinks fresh flowers means they only have to clean once a year. He turns, crooked grin opening into a broad smile, a display of cracked teeth, and thanks an unseen servant, hovering nearby for depositing a chipmunk into a cage that dangles around his neck. There's a lot of different elements there. There's a lot of different things going on. If the tag is good, you're setting the players up with a bunch of pieces that they can then pick up on, and you don't really want them to have to remember all of them. The goal is here, with a tag, is to throw a bunch of things at the wall and see what sticks in the mind of your players. If they remember that this is the character with the chain around their neck that has little cages, Good, they remember that. If they remember that he moves with a shuffling gait, or you show that at your table very well, if that's something that you enjoy showing as the character, then your players will remember that, oh, it's that guy that walks weird. Or even if you kind of hunch one of your shoulders down and stand in a certain manner, that means the players will immediately know who it is that you're trying to be. A tag can also work really well, not only for credible weird humanoids like the librarian and normal-ish player characters like Gelded, but they can also work for magical beasts and monsters, things that the players are going to have a much more fantastical description with. Again, no matter how fantastical the description is, what you're looking for are key elements that the players can latch onto and enjoy, things that they're going to use to describe the creature and to better understand the environment. You're not going to be playing the game for them like they're watching a movie, so you can't show them every single detail in one choreographed scene. What you need to do is give them the highlights of what's going on here so that they have an understanding of maybe a little bit about the character's perspective, or something that is going to make that character stick out for them. So let's talk about the tag for Marvin, Morthak's Magnificent Mouse. A wizard was either turning a lime green lizard into a fat white mouse starting at the tail, or they were turning a fat white mouse into a lizard starting at the head. No matter what was supposed to be the goal, they stopped halfway, and what stands before you is a nervous, quivering creature that inexplicably talks in an excited, rambling form of Elven that dips seamlessly, if somewhat randomly, between showman and madman. These tags can be used in whole or in part depending on how long it's been since they've seen the character as well. Depending on your group and how well they remember things, or maybe how often your sessions are, you can also use varying sizes of tags so that they remember certain things. The goal here, again, is to make sure that the characters know who it is and have a good image in their mind for what it is that you're looking for. So if this is a character that they see every session, you play every week, this is something that's a very common presence, you're not going to need to use the whole tag. You may even be able to use a piece of the tag that they remember all of the time. The characters always remember that the librarian has orange skin. But they might not remember a certain element, where the fingers of the librarian have that taut leather look to them. That could be the piece that you're bringing forward to them, and combining the pieces together to show what it is you're trying to draw attention to. When you're using a tag that they're more familiar with, you can play around with it a little bit more. And we're using a tag where maybe they've not seen this character for a long time, or maybe it's their first introduction to the character, you're going to want to expand upon it so that they have a whole bunch of things to think about and things to remember. Don't be afraid to always listen to the part that the players seem to be latching onto and use that for your descriptions. It's a shared game that we're playing here, a shared form of imagination. So if you talk about a character in a specific way that is not the way that the players remember them, you're going to have a disconnect, and it's going to be a little bit harder to jump right into the scenes. Another element with these tags is, while you have that full long tag we've been talking about with the three characters, the librarian, Gelded, and Marvin, you can also make a smaller, shorter tag, something quick and easy. Gelded shuffles along, chains and cages rattling. The librarian delicately unbuttons his pouch and withdraws the thin journal. Or Marvin shakes, his eyes darting nervously back and forth. As you can see, some of these things are not necessarily things you need to say. Some of them are things that you will show. Some of them will be the way that you express it at the table, and those are going to be called traits. Traits are singular descriptors. These are the building blocks which we're going to build our tag from and what we're going to build our character from. Again, these traits that we're going to talk about are presence traits. This isn't the purpose or what they're doing in the story, although that could help you figure out what your traits are going to be. This is what you're going to be using to make this character come alive at the table. So your focus here are things that you, as a dungeon master, can express well. If there's a certain trait or certain attribute that you really want to do, well, go ahead, give it to one of your NPCs. This might be fun for you to get to try something crazy and see how it sticks at the table. The first major trait is going to be the one that's the most closely linked to their role. This is going to be their purpose. This is their explanation of who they are. It can be a title, and it can be something that shows how this character chooses to interact with the players. This may represent someone who's a soldier, who often salutes and allows the person to speak to them as a superior, only using a particular dialect. They might talk down to everyone. They might talk up to players if the players are well respected in the campaign setting. They might finish the conversations with a salute, or might turn on a heel and go away. These are tiny little things that are going to be indicative or even stereotypical things that match with their role. A soldier, a general, a wizard might have a certain look or certain feel in the setting that you're going for. And you want to use those things because the traits that a lord, a mayor, a wizard might have are going to be different from the traits that a barmaid or a goblin or some other sort of creature is going to have. The librarian, he is special in his purpose because he only uses his title when he communicates with others. Even those that know his name know that there is a mystery, a mystique behind the name itself, and they rarely use it. His trait and his purpose is all within the name, the librarian. The assumption here is you know the librarian is with the library. No matter how many libraries there might be, he is singular. His library is assumed. And that method of thinking about things is going to inform how the players view that character and how the players are able to process the information you're giving them about your purpose of this presence of an NPC. Another example of that can be found in Gelded Blackheart, the hobgoblin. While his last name, his clan name, Blackheart, is definitely a name in a normal sense, something that we would recognize, the first name of Gelded is kind of interesting and weird. Gelded is a word. It means a specific thing, and this presence might be something that the character is happy to talk about or reticent to talk about. If they refer to themselves as Gelded Blackheart, they might try to work that into the conversation. Why are they called Gelded? Why would they use that name for themselves? Gelded, in this particular instance, uses it as a point of pride to explain how hardy he is, that his old clan tried to cast him out for being weird and misshapen, but he refused to die. That character will have a particular purpose, a particular approach to what's going on as an NPC, and will use that as an element to drive the plot and use it as an element to make it familiar for your characters. They will remember the old Gelded hobgoblin. The third purpose that we'll talk about is Marvin, Morthak's magnificent mouse. He says parts he's trained to say with great gestures, and then he's very afraid of his own voice. Oh, no, this could be very scary. I don't really know what's going on here. The way that that character presents itself is tied to its purpose. This mouse was trained to say certain things. This homunculi creature was designed as part familiar, part companion, and as such, it has little whispers of the mage that created it, the vast intellect that was able to mold this creature from two into one, and to give the ability to speak to a mouse and a lizard, neither of which should have it at all. The second major trait type that we are going to talk about is going to be mannerism. These traits are things that you can show to the player at the table. Examples include a way that you stand or the way that you move your body or hands. As you notice in my videos, I move with my hands a lot, and I use my hands to show particular elements and aspects of characters very frequently because it's an easy thing to do at the table. The librarian, he steeples his fingers. If I'm walking or standing, I put it over my stomach. I give myself a very rigid look. An almost imperious sort of gaze goes around the room. If you have a particular thing that is important for you or an aspect of your own character that you can then tie into things, use it as much as you can when you're playing NPCs. Sometimes when I play the librarian, I, with my glasses, will put them on the edge of my nose. I will look down through my glasses towards the players, and when I change into the aspect of the librarian, even just by moving my glasses, the players know, even if my fingers are not steepled, who it is that I'm talking with. Another character with very distinct and unique mannerisms is Old Gelded. His head is off to one side. He has his hands curved into claws, and the way that he speaks to people is almost as if he is hard of hearing. What is it that you wanted to say? He is always moving his chains about his body. If you've got a satchel or something to wear that you can show as a prop or element to use to accentuate this mannerism, that'll work out better for you as well. He might also something like a habit, something that you can easily repeat at the table. Whenever you're thinking about it, or if you put a Post-it note on the table in front of you, you can say, Gelded would be the type that would pick his teeth. I don't remember eating something green. That will give the characters a very easy understanding of the persona of this character, what you're trying to display with them. And no one's going to get your characters confused if there's individual elements that they can pick out from each of the different NPCs. Something quick and easy, things that would fit on a Post-it note. Our third character with mannerisms is Marvin, Morthak's magnificent mouse. If he's speaking in a particular way where he is explaining something that he's supposed to know how to do, a programmed response, he might speak very eloquently and might gesture very fluidly. Yes, it is very easy to pass across the barrier if you know the password. You are asking about things around the house? I don't know. I don't know about things about the house. That's all very, very scary. You can set up a clear understanding for what this character can and can't do, what's triggering the character to do certain things. If the character wants to speak in a very eloquent way, repeating the words of its former mage master, you might be able to set yourself up to project your voice. You might put your hands behind your back and clasp your hands around to better accentuate the way that you're standing, something that signals to your characters what's going on here. And just as you are signaling when the character is going off of a programmed response, you can also make small things with your hand. Imagine holding a tiny piece of cheese, is what I do for Marvin, and looking around, fiercely wanting to protect that tiny piece of cheese and shaking all over, because the world is a scary place for a tiny rodent with lots of magical power. The third trait that we're going to look at is voice. Now, voice is another term that is a literary term that is not just what they say, but how they say it. It's not only the sound of their voice, but it is the words that they choose to express themselves, the things that they are using to portray their identity, not only in what they say, how they say it, how fast, how loud, all of those sort of elements tie in together. Now, one thing that I know does scare some newer DMs or makes people nervous is the idea of the accent. Accent is such a unique thing to use, and I have enough to say on accent in particular that while it is a piece of voice, I'm going to make a separate video for accent to kind of better express the way to go about approaching that particular topic. It's too complicated to get into in this short overview, but understand that accent is one piece of voice. What we're instead going to be focusing on is exactly how they are expressing things and how you can show that for your voice at the table. So our first example of voice is going to be the librarian again. He speaks in a throaty whisper, with lips pulled back in his teeth. He uses minimal inflection, excellent diction, and has a wide and cultured vocabulary. He would call something an esoteric tome. He would not call it a weird book. He does not raise his voice. He focuses on scholarly pursuits and the acquisition of rare knowledge with a special interest in tomes. Our second character's voice is Gelded. His voice for him is not only a tool, but it is something that the character is aware of in the world as well as you as the DM are aware of. Gelded is a bard, a storyteller. His voice is important to him in character, and he knows what it means to be the spooky storyteller. He has a deep and raspy voice. He sounds like someone who's smoked 3 packs a day for 40 years and it's finally caught up with him. He likes to play the part of the spooky storyteller and will use horror tropes intentionally and make people awkward with unusual comparisons. If he can mix in his name, his personal persona with his voice, that is even better. He will often reference himself, and if the good tale gets overly spooky, he might, break character. No, don't worry, little one. It's only a story. The idea of Gelded's voice is twofold. It's a storyteller. He has this image of the spooky storyteller that he is trying to keep and he is trying to hold. And you, as the DM, as playing him, can determine what he's going to do to have that thing break. If you want your characters to know that this is a persona that this NPC is wearing, you can kind of play around with the extra levels of hats that you can wear. Our last example of voice is going to be Marvin, Morthak's magnificent mouse. Marvin's voice is high-pitched and squeaky, and he has not a lot of things to say. Oh dear, oh dear. And he speaks very quickly when he's got things to say, and he doesn't know exactly how to express himself, but he's going to say it all very quickly and all at once. He knows exactly what's going on. He might not actually have any idea what's going on. That's maybe a little bit of a lie, but oh dear, everything is so scary. His motions and his grandeur when he's speaking as Marvin, as the small mouse, is going to be someone who's, oh dear, very scared and very small. That's the whole element of Marvin, is he is very small and scared and the world is so very large. But when Marvin is speaking as the mage, he is not going to be talking like that. He may even share elements with the librarian, as he will be very clear-spoken. He doesn't have the hoarse whisper that the librarian has, because he is showing exactly what needs to be said. He has very specific messages to get across, so his words will be chosen carefully, will be programmed specifically into the mouse, and you, as the DM, may even have a list of pre-programmed things for it to say. Not only can this work for a magically created being like Marvin, there might be other magic elements. A door that is only programmed to say certain things. A golem or other form of automaton might speak as Marvin's master would, using the small lizard or mouse voice as its own to properly express itself and expose the characters to what's going on in the mansion where you encounter Morthek's magnificent mouse. But if the mouse gets distracted and doesn't know exactly what's going on, he might be afraid. He might have to run away. He might get distracted unless... Do you have any cheese? Like Gelded, there can be ways to break from character. Marvin has particular things that it's programmed to say, and even then, Marvin can be distracted away from his fear and terror by the promise of a little bit of cheese. The purpose of this video is going to be to summarize some of the elements that we're going to be using. You can draw upon these elements and sort of pick the different pieces that you would need for your character, taking individual pieces and gathering it together into a whole NPC so you can show things at table. You can also take a list of certain elements that you see that you don't know if you're going to use them at table, but you might just throw them out there and see what sticks. If the NPCs talk to a bartender and you decide that that bartender is going to be someone who curses profusely as part of their voice, then you can throw that in there. That might just be one of a list of 100 different little traits that you might use. If something comes across and the players really enjoy it, well, play that part up. Maybe make that character more important to the story. Maybe make that particular element of that character more drastic or at odds with one of the other characters. When you are able to figure out what parts of these characters' presence is shown at table, and you are able to clearly show to your players the steepled fingers, and they know you mean the librarian. You hunch your shoulders, you pull up your little piece of cheese, you begin to shake and look around. They know Marvin is afraid and is about to say something. If you place your foot on the ground and drag it as you move forward, head crooked to the side in a crooked and broken smile, they know Gelded has something to say. The elements here are to make sure that you have tools needed to make your life easier. One of the things that people get worried about is they look at these things as something that has to be done for every NPC imaginable. Don't do that. You'll drive yourself crazy. The world should be a living, breathing world with tens of thousands, millions of different things in it. Not only every innkeeper and innkeeper's daughter, but every different goblin might have a voice or a way of expressing themselves. That's not going to be something that's going to be helpful to you if you try to do it all at once and bog yourself down. What you want to do instead is pick a couple of elements that'll make it easy for you to not have to say, oh, no, this is Marvin saying that. Or no, I meant to say that as a librarian. Or when you're having multiple NPCs talk to one another, you can minimize the number of times where the mayor says this. You say your piece, and then you say, well, the city ranger says this, and then they say their piece. If you have developed a presence for each of those characters, and you have something clear and easy for you to use, a tag or some other sort of element that you can use on a post-it note, then you can take that post-it note, put it in front of you at a table, and once your players start to catch on to what you're doing, it will stick in their minds as something interesting and fun, and will make the process of playing an NPC not this crazy, arcane, weird mixture of everything in the world all showing together at once, but it will just be a single identity that you can use the biggest pieces of to try to show your players what it is you mean. If you are still struggling with the idea of, well, I don't want them to all feel like stereotypes, or I don't want them to be boiled down to the simplest elements, that's fine. You can develop your NPCs as much as you want. The key here of talking about your table presence is using enough pieces so that you can use a very, very minimal amount that your players will immediately jump in and know what's going on. It doesn't mean that your NPC has to be a caricature, but if you ask your players for a trait from an NPC and what they remember of something, if they give you back a caricature, a grossly exaggerated example of one of the different traits that you were using to express them, then don't consider that a failure. That's a job well done. The players remember this. The players will be able to jump in and have an easier time moving through your world and your story. That will be a great benefit to you in the long run. So enjoy it.